Hiya, so I think I'm live. A few minutes early. A few minutes early. Not because I was desperate to get on. I am desperate to get on, of course, as always. Hiya, so I think I'm live. A few minutes early. A few minutes early. Shut up, you idiot. Right. Mainly, I'm on a few minutes early. Hiya, Kaka. Because Ian Hazakostas has completely cock-blocked me. He's going live in a few minutes. I was doubly audible then. I've shut that off. So I will be piping through what he's saying. So we may spend this first part of it actually listen to what he's saying and trying to go. It may go very wrong. I hadn't planned to do this. I have done this sort of thing before where I'd planned to do it. I didn't know he was going to do this. Apparently, hi everyone, Declan, Malinoric and Iron Templar. Someone was saying that he did tease it in the AMA. I must have missed that then. I'm not saying I read every single comment. Gold Rippy higher. So yes, he's going live in about 5 minutes. I don't know whether it's with or without Josh Allen, but it's still very strange. It's almost like, so very recently they've done a live Q&A for which was planned, for which they gave the, I mean even that they don't give very much notice, but they gave notice. Then there was the AMA, which is basically, oh, tomorrow we're doing an AMA. Then there's this where I saw the notification half an hour ago. All right, it might have come out more recently than that, but it's super. And I'm thinking, this is almost good. The fact that they're doing this regular chat thing, not only does it prove they can do it if they need to, but isn't it disappointing that, again, this is probably more firefighting. Maybe they don't feel they really put out enough fires with the AMA, and maybe this is more of it. In which case, I'll be super, super interested to see if Josh Allen is accompanying him or if it's just him. Because I have to say, I think Law causes more trouble. It sounds bizarre. You would think if you've got a community manager who's a PR guy and just the boss of the thing who is not employed for their PR skills, if anyone was going to be pouring whiskey on the fire, it would be the game developer. But no, it's the other way around. Anyway. Yeah, no, it'll be, as soon as he's live, it's all there, ready. As soon as he's live, it'll be coming through. Because obviously, what else are we going to talk about while it's on, exactly. Hi, oh, could you not put another vowel in there? It's gone. The mad. You only started watching me 2 weeks ago. Wow, okay. You're just keen to see what it says. I'm keen to see why they've done it. They've done the live Q&A really recently. He can have no new information compared to a couple of weeks ago. Then he did the AMA. That was firefighting. What's this about? I mean, surely it's got to be more of the same. At the same time, isn't it? I can't get over just how disappointing it is that they're doing all this feedback stuff, this communication now, because things have gone badly. Wouldn't it be nice to do this? I'm not saying they should do multiple a week all the time, but, you know, wouldn't it be nice to have something each week? But with some notice, like, don't snipe my Azeroth review. I think he's done it deliberately. Isn't it a patch drop? Yeah, he may well be doing that, but why so sudden? I don't think it will be just for that. They've had patches before where they haven't suddenly gone, oh, by the way, in half an hour I'm going to go on Twitch and talk about it. There's something. There's some other reason for it. Where's the chat thing? There it is. Yeah, I'm quite sure that what he's going to be talking about is the patch. I just don't know why in this way. They've never done it in this way before, and at such, you know, with like no notice. Kulturans and Zandalari trolls, maybe. Yeah. You would think so. Maybe. I don't know. What do I think about the grind fest to unlock allied races? I don't mind that so much as the very genuine grind to, if you want the heritage armor, which thankfully I don't care enough about, to have to level 1 all the way up from level 20. That I'm more disappointed with. I don't think there's any need for that. The idea of doing, you know, a campaign to unlock the races in the first place, that's fine. I'm okay with that. That's fine. Yeah, not entirely known to us. They announced it in the stream of the AMA. Well, that's the thing. Well, I missed it, though. But I was also told by someone he sort of hinted at it rather than said it. I mean, did he say it was going to be Tuesday, whatever this is on the Pacific? It's 7 PM where I am. I think, I don't know what that is there. Because this is also earlier than the AMA, isn't it? This must be morning. Is this... Hang on. Yeah, this must still be morning in California, mustn't it? I think it's 8 hours difference. So it'd be like 11 o'clock, wouldn't it? It's a bit early. They usually do these things from their point of view in the afternoon. So I think there's more to this than, oh, this is a suitable way to talk about an upcoming patch. You like grinding? Oh, I dislike it. You're okay with the grind for the cool armor. I think the game needs more stuff like that. See, it depends what you call a grind. Like, if you're doing the content you want to do, then I don't consider it a grind. I'm okay with it. Excuse me, but if I don't want to do it, then it's just... Oh, hello, he's on.
Everybody, thank you for tuning
Let me know what the
in and
volume's
joining us
like.
for this live stream today. So, slightly different format. You may notice Josh isn't up here with me. This isn't Q&A like the usual format.
No Josh.
We still have a lot to talk about, an ongoing conversation about...
Hang on, he's just going to talk shit for a minute. Right, that confirms it. I think he thinks Josh Allen caused more trouble and didn't help at all in that AMA. That's why he's here on his own.
About what's coming
Sorry, I'll leave him on now.
Battle for Azeroth content-wise.
Have I seen Balula's... No, I don't watch
far,
Balula anymore.
You know, we've had
not after he started nicking other
Alliance
people's work.
Kicked off this expansion just over a month ago with massive battles, massive war. And Alliance really suffered a number of heavy losses throughout that process. Of course, the tree at Teldrassil was burned down. They thought they had the upper hand at the Battle for Lordaeron, the Undercity, but defeat was snatched from the jaws of victory as the Horde left the city in ruins behind them. And recently, the Horde's been making incursions into Arathi Highlands and so forth. Now, it's time, however, for the Alliance to strike back. And so we had this initial war that broke out, and since then, we've moved on to Kul Tiras, to Zandalar, in search of new allies. And a lot of what we've been doing recently is working with Jaina, working with Talanji, working with the new friends that we've made, the folks that we've met. And for some, that larger conflict in the Horde Alliance, unless you play in war mode, may feel a bit more removed, a bit more distant, because we've been solving the problems with Blood Trolls and Sethrak and the Drust and the minions of Queen Ashara and so forth. But that's all about to change. So I'm excited to announce the first major content update for Battle for Azeroth, Tides of Vengeance. I want to talk about what exactly this is going to entail, what you can expect.
Zoth, hopefully.
So first off, we have a lot of just core quest-driven, story-driven content in our outdoor world and elsewhere. The war campaign will, of course, continue. We're going to have additional chapters that continue to tell the story of the Alliance build-up, the Horde build-up. As having laid their initial plans, they now make more heavy inroads into enemy territory and really look to undermine the opposition. We also have incursions, which are a new feature that are reminiscent to some extent of Legion assaults that we had back in patch 7.2 during Legion, where instead of the demons raining from the sky, there are going to be situations where an Alliance landing force has arrived in Tiragard Sound, and they have carved out an area of control. They have ships with forces pouring in. This will turn off world quest respawns on the area and enable a new set of content with
similar to
a wrapper that can
isn't
be
it?
Completed once you've done enough of it. Very similar to how the Legion assaults were structured. Also, this will be available. These world quests will be available for any leveling alts that have already unlocked world quests. Again, as a way to sort of boost your leveling, vary the experience from the zones you may have already played through. We also are going to have a number of new world quests just added to the
Yes, well, Tirasgard isn't Alliance at the moment. It's called Tiras, which hasn't joined the Alliance quite yet, has it? Although it's
also excited to continue some existing storylines and introduce
we know
new
it's
ones.
going to be.
In Battle for Azeroth, we delved into Jaina's backstory and what it meant for her to return to her homeland after this period of effective exile. We saw a little bit about what might have happened to the Spirit of Vol'jin, but there's much more to tell on all of these fronts. And we're going to be looking very closely at Saurfang, whom as members of the Horde we last saw languishing in the Stormwind stockades, lamenting lost honor. Tyrande, what is she feeling? What is she doing? What are she and Malfurion doing in the aftermath of seeing their homeland, of seeing Teldrassil burn before their eyes? And yes, what is everyone's favorite Urn up to? And what has become of Vol'jin? And is there a future for him?
The Vol'jin story.
This and more are going to be explored in Tides of Vengeance, the coming content update. Now, Heritage Armor. So thus far, Heritage Armor has been a reward for allied races. But what if, we've heard from a number of players that it's awesome having this set of transmog
as long as I don't have
really
to grind
like it expresses your racial identity. And it's amazing to see, the Void Elves, the Mag'har Orcs, and others have this suit of armor that's crafted just for them. Well, what if some other races could get that too? And so we're happy to introduce a couple of quest lines.
Silhouette looked like an orc one at first.
That will allow initially dwarves and blood elves to explore their racial heritage and earn a suit of armor custom made for them that they can show off to the world.
I hope not, Malinora.
Don't worry,
I hope
there's
we don't have to re-level.
Massive rep grind or anything behind this. This is just if you are a max level character and you are exalted with your own capital city, which is a relatively easily attainable rep. So if you're a dwarf, you're exalted with Ironforge.
So that sounds
you
fine.
can just log in, jump right into this quest line, and delve into a bit of your history and earn this reward to show off.
So that's great. You don't have to re-level.
We're just doing these first 2 races for now, but this is something we look to continue to build on, just as we are with allied races, because I think racial identity is a really important aspect.
What's the guessing that when they get round to gnomes, they'll just put them on pogo sticks?
People feel their characters is something we're excited about, and there are amazing stories to explore. Like on the Blood Elf side, for example, the massive dead scar that runs up and down the land towards Silvermoon. Not many players may know that that was actually the result of a Scourge
concept art for
led
the
by
dwarf
the king
one,
himself,
but not for the Blood Elf one. Does that suggest that this is a long way off yet?
That story, as
if they haven't got anything to show,
understand how they ended up where they are and what it means to be a Blood Elf. We also have a new warfront. So as I mentioned, the Alliance suffered some heavy blows in the initial events of Battle for Azeroth, but now it's time for them to strike back. And so this is actually going to be the Night Elven forces and the Alliance as a whole looking to retake Darkshore, looking to reestablish a foothold
if you're
in
human and
Kalimdor,
identify as a Tauren, you may be out of luck.
Looking to reclaim their ancestral
Azeroth
homelands.
is not an equal opportunity.
Now, this warfront is going to really be very heavily themed around Night Elves versus Forsaken. And so that means new structures, new upgrades, new systems. You can construct and summon large Ancients of War and ballistas and the full range of units that you would expect in the traditional Warcraft 3 style for Night Elves and Forsaken to muster. Now, of course, there are going to be Horde and Alliance participants as well, but this is a very different look on, a very different take on the Warfront experience. And of course, given the structure, this is going to be one that Alliance starts out attacking at the very start because these lands are by default held by the Horde. So when this update comes out, the Alliance will be able to jump right into donating, going in, getting access to all of the loot that's involved in the Warfront experience. And just as we did with the Arathi Highlands, we're also going to be updating the outdoor zone of Darkshore as a max level experience that will have quests and rares and events and things to do for the faction in particular that controls the zone at the time. So that it means something to know that your faction controls the area, and even if you don't have the Warfront at the time, you have access to this outdoor content there.
Well, we don't know what the Blood Elf stuff
Warfront's
looks like
obviously
yet.
a new type of, a new type of feature, a new type of content that we've introduced in Battle for Azeroth. We're of course continuing to expand as well upon, islands. We're going to have 2 new islands.
I will as soon as it's
in
finished.
Battle for Azeroth in
I don't know how much longer it'll go on.
So first, Jarendal is a Vrykul-themed island full of looming ancient Vrykul ruins and mysteries to explore, as well as Havenwood, which is a gloomy, abandoned Gilnean city that looms and towers over this island, giving it a gothic vibe, a bit more civilized than a lot of the islands that we've come across so far. And players will jump in, explore it, in search of Azerite, of course. Now, as we look at the island system as a whole, we're not just adding 2 new islands, we're also learning from a lot of the feedback that we've gotten in the last month since the game has gotten live, and our own experiences playing the game, and continuing to improve the underlying system. I think an area that's a major focus for the team is adding significantly more variety, adding new events, new exciting things that you can come across that more meaningfully deliver on the idea that each experience is going to be different.
I'm super nervous if you're asking me, because I don't know what it's going to say.
Holdouts that you can trigger, or Azerite extraction, Azerite extractors that you might set up and defend on behalf of your faction that give you a slow trickle of Azerite while you control them, but then you have to worry about the enemy forces recapturing them and shifting them over to their side while
patch.
you're away, making the island a bit more dynamic rather than giving you a sense that, okay, you've cleared out this area, there's no reason to come back. Now, underlying all of this, we're looking at the broader systems, and that means both rewards, but also the way the islands are spawned in general. How we have some major spawning improvements coming to islands in Tides of Vengeance, where it's not just going to be... We want to move a bit away from...
You never find out lots of details in these sort of announcements.
With spawns by whatever enemies are currently
he's probably just not used to it.
And a bit more of a feel that better reflects the traditional flow of World of Warcraft gameplay, where there are more tightly clustered hubs that are more likely to have rares and treasures and things to do there.
I don't think he's a natural
more
public
gaps,
speaker.
more navigability beyond as a whole between those hubs. So more clustering, and I think in our internal playtests thus far, this has made an immediate improvement on the overall feel. We're looking forward to letting people jump in on the public test realm and check this out. Now, aside from new stuff, we also have traditional mainstays of WoW content. And so Tides of Vengeance is also going to be bringing a new large raid zone to World of Warcraft. Now, this is quite different from any raid we've done before. Really, historically, the raid is Siege of Zuldazar. Name not necessarily final, but location definitely final.
It is sort of out of the blue.
Historically, in World of Warcraft, the way the big bad villain is expressed is often as a raid boss, right? Whether it's Burning Crusade facing Illidan in the Black Temple.
I'm not sure where he's going with this.
Ascend Icecrown
I don't like where he's going with this.
The Lich King himself. That's the ultimate expression of combat against a foe. Well, here, if the foe's the opposite faction, many players have rightly noticed, hey, we've been spending a lot of time fighting the forces of Gahun. What about the Alliance? What about the Horde? Well, that's all about to change. Because the enemy in this raid is the opposite faction. And what that means is a bit of a unique take on what a raid can be in World of Warcraft. We actually have two completely separate experiences, whether you're Alliance or whether you're Horde. So the story here, some slight spoilers, but this will all be data mined soon enough. So one of the big things that the Alliance war campaign, the war effort is building towards, is this strike, a first strike, a preemptive attack on the Zandalari fleet, on the city of Zuldazar, to cripple the new Horde Alliance and make sure that the Alliance maintains the upper hand. And so all of the events are leading to this. And so you, as an Alliance player, will join Jaina, join the the Alliance forces. Land in the harbor at Zuldazar, fight your way through the city, up into the pyramid, including the inside of the pyramid that we haven't seen before.
Close it down and start it up
ascending to the top to confront King Rastakhan. Meanwhile, Horde players, learning that the Alliance is attacking their city, will rush to its defense, beginning on the far northern side of the pyramid, in the jungles of Zuldazar, through Alliance forces fighting different bosses, the remains of the Alliance attack, and eventually culminating in a battle against Alliance commanders, including Jaina herself, on the high seas. So two separate six-boss experiences. Now, after that, we also want to give players a chance to see the other side of the story.
Turn that off, see if that improves it.
So once you've finished this raid in its entirety, you'll return to what remains of Zuldazar, or if you're Alliance, you'll return to Borealis, where you will learn from scouts, from soldiers who are on the front lines, what happened in your absence. As a Horde player, well, what did the Alliance do before we got there? And through the vehicle of them retelling the story, you'll be able to experience the three bosses on the other faction side that you didn't get to witness firsthand. And so what that means is, whether you're Horde, whether you're Alliance, you'll have a total of 9 boss encounters as you go through this raid. And this is telling the story, the very real conflict in the Horde and Alliance in a way that we've never done before. We've had, the occasional faction champions type fight, or, really, even in Siege of Orgrimmar, it was both factions sieging Orgrimmar because they had a common enemy in Garrosh. Very, very different story here. We also have a second raid. This one's going to be coming a little bit later on, but this raid's called the Crucible of Storms. It's a 2-boss raid that's actually nestled underneath the Shrine of the Storm in Stormsong Valley, and begins to hint at some of the dark secrets behind the Kathir, the influence of Queen Ashara, and more that Alliance players in particular have begun to uncover there, but that we're going to need to deal with, we're going to need to contend with. After we've stamped out the corruption of Gahun on Zandalar, Kultiris has more than a few problems of its own.
Just the video, or is the audio gone as well? Can you actually hear me, or anything else?
The thought is that this will be available.
Because I do not know what's up.
After Zuldazar.
Blizzard shut me down. Maybe they did.
Players with too much raid content. I know people right now are probably hearing this and thinking, like, like not even halfway through Uldir. But don't worry, we're going to, as we did in Legion, we want to make sure that we're continuing a steady stream of content, the release of which we pace out so that you're not overwhelmed, but also not feeling like you're waiting too long.
Right, okay. Let's see if this works first of all. Heck. Because otherwise I do not know what the issue is. I don't seem to have a particular problem as far as I can tell. Hold on. I don't seem to have a problem with my internet. But at the same time, yeah, on my end it's telling me I'm streaming, but at the same time I can see now on where it should be showing up, it's not showing up. What is going on? Right, okay. Is it now working? It looks like it might be working now. Right, it's back up. I don't know what the issue was there. Let's hope it wasn't the fact that I'm patching through something from Twitch. So I turned the sound off, but let's turn it back on and hope it doesn't go tits up again.
Not too different from how step bonuses used to work.
Sorry about that. I have no idea what the issue was there.
Were relatively simple because classes had changed, people were still figuring things out.
If it was the fact that I'm piping through something from Twitch,
there'll be new profession recipes.
Even though
I'm
piping it through, not through
pet battle enthusiasts out there who've been wondering when the next chapter in Ian took me down. Maybe he did. Going to be.
So first of all, he does it at the same time as I stream, and then he takes me out.
Reputation, something that's been touched on a lot in discussion recently. We already had plans in the
Hasn't the entire whole storyline? Well, to be fair, yes, the whole storyline has. But then again, it's more about the Horde, isn't it, at the moment?
Azeroth itself. So in Tides of Vengeance, you'll be able to just log in.
I mean, when they say that the next raid is going to be Siege of Zuldazar, it's very Horde related. You'll notice as well.
A lot of feedback, especially in the last few days, about some of the things that make Reputation.
This is really awkward when he's talking
when
at the
you're
same
playing
time.
Alts or looking at
We'll have to maybe talk about it when he's finished.
One of the big
I hope he
ones
finishes
there,
soon.
is transmog, actually. There are a number of rep-restricted items on vendors and other sources around the world, where if you I think the almost silly, ironic example is, if you're exalted with the High Mountain Tauren and you unlock and make a High Mountain allied race, your new High Mountain Tauren can't use that tabard because they're not yet exalted with High Mountain, and it has that requirement. So we're actually
I've forgotten what he called it now.
To pretty much remove those restrictions on faction-based transmogs across the game. Once you've earned it, everyone on your account can use it. You don't have to worry about having to re-earn that. Separately, and another pain point has been for completionists who are working towards the big achievements like 60, 70, 80 exalted reputations. We're going to make progress towards that achievement truly account-wide. So if you have 70 reps on character A and 20 different reps on character B, that'll actually add up to the 90. And you don't have to worry about being unable to switch characters.
Okay,
because
thank God. Reps should be account-wide.
And you want to make sure that Horde and Alliance
so much more should be account-wide.
So it's not nerfing the achievement, it's more just raising accessibility as a whole. One thing I just wanted to address, actually thought of this while talking. I know the number of people who are wondering where Kultiran and Zandalari are. We talked about them in the past as an upcoming allied race. We're not quite yet there in the story, but they're very close.
They're not going to announce it yet.
In the events following the raid, that's where this
So you're not getting Kultirans and Zandalari at Trolls
and our factions will truly be forged, and where we'll be able to recruit and bring the Kultiran and Zandalari formally into our factions.
Maybe it's a
and no, if you're worrying or wondering about this,
1.5.
You're not going to have to rep up with some new faction. If you are, exalted with the Proudmoore Admiralty or Zandalari Empire, and you've done the war campaign, that's enough. You've played through the story, you've earned their alliance, they will come join your faction, but that's not going to happen until after the raid. So, when is this coming? The goal is, fingers crossed, the Tides of Vengeance update we want to have on the public test realm by the end of the week. So I know there'll be data mining out there, people jumping onto the servers as soon as they go up, and
so
there's a lot more that I didn't even begin to touch on. There's a lot of tiny changes, a lot of new art assets, things that you'll be seeing soon, but we're incredibly excited to share this with you. And again, just to recap, we have a new Warfront, 2 new raids, 2 new islands, island improvements, heritage armor for non-allied races, broader systems improvements, and more. Can't wait to see you in the public test realm. Can't wait for everyone to jump
Too
on and
short
check
a
it out.
rage. Right.
Again, thank you for tuning in.
Siege of
and
Zuldazar,
we have a whole lot more to discuss in the future when it comes to Battle for Azeroth as a whole. But when it comes to the story, when it comes to the content in the game, we have we're viewing the Legion patch plan as our template, and that's what we want to carry forward. We always want to make sure the world is evolving, the story is evolving, the things you have to do in the game are evolving, and that the content is well-paced. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you all later.
Right, okay, he's done. Thank God for that. Right, I think when I put this onto YouTube, as in an actual video, I'm going to have to edit all that first bit out and start now. Anyway. So, yeah, 2 more raids. But, right, so I missed a good chunk of that, I have to say, when I was trying to work out why the stream had dropped. So, some people needed to bring me up. So, here's the thing. I saw Siege of Zuldazar mentioned as a raid, and I also heard him say there's going to be... The raids are going to be where the enemy is actually the enemy faction. Does that mean, someone tell me, when it was Siege of Zuldazar and Crucible of Storms, is he actually saying that they're 2 raids? Is it that the Alliance are going to do Siege of Zuldazar and the Horde are going to do Crucible of Storms, or are they actually 2 raids that we're both going to do? I missed that. Can someone tell me that at least? Because I missed a good chunk of what he was saying while I was trying to beat some sense into the stream. It is 2 distinct raids. Right. Did anyone catch then in what sense? Oh, Alliance's attack is... Alliance is attacking, Horde is defending. Okay. Crucible of Storms is a 2 boss raid. All right, fine. Because the thing is, like, the other thing is, this Siege of Zuldazar then, surely that's not... Because I thought that the next major raid... So the Crucible of Storms, I'm guessing, will be the one that comes out in December. As it's the shorter one, like Trial of Valor type thing. I guess, I'm just guessing. I don't know whether he said that or not. Siege of Zuldazar, if that comes out, like, let's say January or something. I don't know. Again, just guessing. Does that mean... I mean, I thought that Ashara was supposed to be in that equivalent raid. I'm not sure that I really see Ashara in a Siege of Zuldazar raid. I'm not quite following how that would happen. Yeah, Trial of Valor had 3 bosses, but the point is it was a small raid. It doesn't matter about how many bosses. It was a small raid that they brought out in December. Why don't I just rewatch the VOD? Well, I will. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. We might as well talk. People have said things. I mean, in terms of what he's announced, which is heartening at least, is the heritage armor for non-allied races. Here's where, again, I hope they thought it through. So, if you've got... So, they're going to do it for dwarves and blood elves in the first instance. So, let's say you've got a blood elf. If you're already exalted with Silvermoon City, and you've got a blood elf at level cap, then you will just be able to do this set of scenario-based quests and unlock the heritage armor. That all seems fine to me. But here's the thing. Someone might reasonably say, well, hang on a minute. As long as we get a character and boost it to that level, the level cap, before that patch, we can effectively boost a character to get the heritage armor. But you can't do that with an allied race. So then there might be cries of foul about how come the allied races still have to go through all this rigmarole when the other races don't. You know, this could be one of those situations where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I hope they've thought it all through, so they don't get butthurt again if they're not. I'm not saying that there will be complaints. People might just be happy that they're going to be getting heritage armor for eventually all races. But again, I notice that he had concept armor, concept illustration rather than, well, you know, coloured illustration of the dwarf one, but I didn't see one for the blood elf one. If you boost, your rep is not boosted with you, no, but it doesn't take much to get that rep, does it? It doesn't take anywhere near as long to get rep for a faction as it does to level the bloody thing all the way up. I'm sure Wowhead and MMO Champion have both got summaries on the front pages. Yes, I shall check that in a moment. I mean, I caught most of it. I only missed like a few minutes where I was smashing my head against the keyboard. It's only cosmetic, nothing impactful. No, except as I keep arguing, I think cosmetic stuff is more important because it's there permanently. Power stuff is important that they balance, because that's something they haven't done, you know, this week, something that they could get criticised for, and I'm sure they will get criticised for. So there's been some tuning this week, as expected. They've tuned some Azerite traits, but some classes may have been getting a lot of benefit from those Azerite traits. They haven't retuned those classes. So there may be some classes that are unintentionally nerfed this reset. And that could be harsh. You've got to bear in mind, there's 3 guilds at the moment. Well, there's 4 more than that, really. But I think 3 guilds, realistically, are going head-to-head on the world first. So, at the sharp end of the world first race, hi, Lazy Man. At the sharp end of the world first race, he's basically, effectively, nerfed some classes. I mean, it affects everyone equally, but still. What? Oh, dear. No mention of eating old allied race requirements. No, there's no mention of that. I mean, that might be one of those... To be honest, if I was him, that might be one of those situations where I'd think to myself, well, let's just see. If it looks like there's going to be a significant amount of moaning about it, then just change it. And if not, leave it as it is. But if I were them, I would be ready to change it for allied races as well, if there was some significant unhappiness. What do I think they're going to have to show us at BlizzCon? Well, BlizzCon will be a little bit before you would expect one of those raids to come out. If you expect one of those raids to come out in December, which I think I do, then BlizzCon, I imagine, will not only give... Because that was that was a typical patch announcement. Very light on detail. Of necessity, not criticising that. At BlizzCon, I think... Well, for a start, the PTR will have been in full swing. So I think we'll get a lot more on that raid. I think we'll also get information on... there's presumably going to be a new dungeon. I'm guessing there'll be a new dungeon. But in terms of announcements, I suppose they'll have something concrete about Kulturans and Zandalari Trolls by then. I'm not sure that this year's BlizzCon will be as explosive, unless they're really keeping something up their sleeve, as maybe past few years. Just because I think it's a weird time for it. He didn't talk about class tuning, no. I think they did enough damage last week on that. But like I say, I thought it was interesting that Josh Allen wasn't there. Now, it could be coincidence, because if all he's going to do is an announcement, then you could argue he doesn't need to be there. He's not there to, do those question and answers. At the same time, he was there on the AMA, because I would be querying, why was Josh Allen involved in the AMA? So, I don't know. I don't want to stoke up trouble where it doesn't exist. But I just wonder if Ian Hazakostas, or indeed a few other people are of the same mind as me, that Josh Allen is basically a little bit toxic now these days. That was a people are pissed and we have to tell them something to tide. Is that a pun there, to tide them over? Given that the patch is going to be called Tides of Vengeance. All right, Rogues. Yeah. Well, obviously, any classes that were overtuned already and have received a nerf to their BIS trait, I mean, they wouldn't necessarily have had to compensate that. But maybe some middle-of-the-road classes, if they've had their BIS traits, or because the more common traits, maybe. Because I actually thought to myself, I think Peculiar from Wowhead was saying about this feature on IO Radar or something, where you can actually have a look at the most, well, what it calls the most popular Azerite traits used for certain boss kills, which later on in the raid will be potentially useful, but you have to be careful not to get, drawn in there. People can read too much into it. But at the moment, it's pointless, because the traits that people have when they're killing bosses right now are not necessarily their BIS traits. They may be, but they may just be the best of what they've got. reference to Ties of Darkness. Well, of course. Everything is. Like, even this expansion, Battle for Azeroth, was in the... not the title, but the thing on the front box of Warcraft 2. Everything about this is a hark back to the past. I imagine the name of every single patch in this expansion will be an Easter egg from, you know, to harken back to the past of the game. Ian also talks about the fact that current traits are intentionally simple and the traits coming in the next patch should be more interesting. Well, you say more interesting, they may not be more fun though. They may be. My worry is, I saw, for Ret Paladins, there was a data mine trait during the alpha beta time. And it would be awful. Awful. I don't think it's in the game files anymore. It moved out. But whether it was because it's intended for later on, or whether they've just decided it was awful and taken it out, I don't know. I hope it's the latter. But, how long will it be before 8.1 is live on servers? I'm guessing, if it includes that small raid, I'm going to guess December. In fact, you don't even have to guess, really, do you? If it's coming out on the PTR this week, then late November sounds about right to me. You know, things were on in Legion. I think things were on the PTR for a couple of months, weren't they, for patches? If I remember, maybe sometimes 3 months, but I don't think it's going to be 3 months. I think it'll go before Christmas. I think it'll be December at the latest. Take a moment to appreciate just how bad the Blizzard's API and docs are. Surely content over, you know, quality over quantity, so to speak. Content over style. That's the only way I have any hope. I have zero style when it comes to these things. Can't wait to see Darkshore with fancy new graphics. Well, that's the only thing. Do you know what? There is a reason why I chose this background this week. I wonder if anyone can guess. I can't get my lighting quite right today. I don't know what the issue is. But I chose this particular background for a very specific reason. You can see it's obviously it's Stormsong Valley, but from the alpha, because the windmills are not complete, the textures haven't all been completed, and the reason I chose it is because obviously Battle for Azeroth is in certain areas fairly incomplete, and some people I think are far too ready to say, oh, well, you know, there's bound to be a few things that need doing and a few... And to a certain extent, that's true. I can understand a few bugs and things like that. But the way I liken it is this. Imagine if the arts department were like that. Imagine if when it went live, there were scenes like this with untextured models and landscapes and things. Imagine if we'd consider that acceptable if it launched. You know, if it went live and there was still artwork to be done. You know. And I liken it to the same thing. So if we expect all the artwork to be done, why wouldn't we expect the classes to be done, the Azerite traits to be done? And I accept the fact that there might be some fine-tuning of it. But if it's more than fine-tuning, as far as I'm concerned, it's like they've brought this out with, you know, the windmills in this state. He seemed really awkward. No, I think he always is, to be fair. Ian has, you've got to remember, Ian Hazakostas, he started off, I don't know what his job, I know he was legally trained. I don't know that that necessarily means he was a lawyer. But, okay, that's how he started off life. And he then played World of Warcraft. And then he got he got a job at Blizzard as an encounter designer. So and he was considered a very good one. So a good encounter designer. He's then moved on to, you know, becoming assistant game director, and now he's the game director. All of those steps, those parts of those jobs didn't really require that he do a lot of standing up on a stage and talking, stuff like that. So he's not necessarily naturally comfortably doing it. Some people are as well. Some people are just naturally comfortably doing that. Some people are not. Some people will, you know, eventually get better. But for all we know, he might be very brave. He might actually be petrified of, even when it's just to a camera, but he knows there's other people on the end of it. And it's actually taken a good deal of courage from him to do that, maybe. So I don't think we can necessarily blame that. And I certainly don't think we can read into anything to do with the way it is today, because I think he's always like that. I think it's how he is at BlizzCon. I think it's how he is in the Q&As. He might look a little bit more relaxed in the Q&As because he's sat down. There he was stood up again. Which naturally, if you feel a bit uncomfortable, is going to make you look more awkward. Legion launched with heaps of issues. I think a lot of the issues Legion launched with, though, there were certainly things that weren't working, but a lot of those problems were down to Blizzard's philosophy on some number of things. So we had the thing with the legendaries, didn't we? Where a lot of people, if they got one legendary, had a bloody high chance to get the second legendary quite quickly. You also had the thing where, you know, in terms of where the bad luck protection stopped if you had 4. But a lot of those things were caused by their decision in terms of, you know, how they should drop. But there were certainly bugs there. I don't think they were as noticeable for most people, though, as in BFA. I think they're much more noticeable in BFA. I mean, on the ships, do you know when you go to your ship to do your missions and stuff like that? I remember when they first appeared in the alpha, and it was quite funny because you'd have the banners and things stuck halfway through the floor, or even characters basically stuck in the floor. That still happens now. I can be in the ship and there's the feet of someone on the deck sticking through them. That still happens. I think people should focus on what he says. Yeah, I would absolutely focus on what he says. Trying to focus on how he says it, yeah, because I just don't think he's a natural public speaker. That's all there is to it. And they did have plenty of resources, certainly, to develop Legion, because, yes, they sacrificed a lot of WoD content to make sure that Legion was firing on all cylinders. It could now be argued that with BFA, I mean, Legion, I think there's no doubt about it, had more resources on it than any other expansion that the game has had. And that includes the latest expansion. The incursions sound good. I don't know, do they? It's like, they might sound good. It depends how they are in practice. I'll be honest, when the invasions happened on the Broken Isles, it used to irritate me. I didn't like them. I preferred, you know, if I went to a zone, because it was the emissary cache that day, if I saw that it was the invasions, I just used to think, oh, shit. Didn't like it at all. So it all depends on, are the incursions going to be more fun than the world quest that would otherwise be in that zone? If they are, then great. If they're not, then I'm going to be equally annoyed. Having 2 Warfronts up at the same time. Yeah, well, this is the thing about Warfronts. He did say, to be fair, last week, that people are annoyed at the moment just because there is only one Warfront out. And the Alliance have had to wait around to get their crack at it. Whereas once some more come out, they'll be sort of dovetailing in a bit better. That being said, although it's understandable and it makes sense, I still say that they should have foreseen it. They should have foreseen that it'd be annoying and should have thought to themselves, is this a good idea? Because where you don't want people to be frustrated with content is right at the start of an expansion. The start of the expansion is when you have more people playing than at any other time in the expansion, except maybe just before the next expansion. In which case, surely you want to give the best possible impression of every single piece of content. And although it's given the way they're doing Warfronts, it's understandable, I still don't think it's a good decision to do it like that. You would like to see Zidormi? Who's Zidormi? Oh, I know what you mean. You mean the dragon. Right. No. Maybe. They could. I don't. the thing is, it will seem less special. I think if they put the dragon in to allow you to change phases, it will almost seem like they're acknowledging that some people won't like it. It's going to be hard to get to Christmas without some of this content or improvements. It'll not go all the way up to Christmas. I'm quite certain that the new raid, albeit that's probably the shorter one to begin with, will be out late November, early December. I'm sure that it will. I mean, Uldir hasn't got the legs on it to last till the new year. You like the idea of different raids for different factions. I'm not sure. Again, how will it affect the world first race? Well, this is the issue, isn't it? This is what I said at the beginning. I cannot believe that they would do even a different thing. Because if you're not fighting the same bosses, does that mean... I mean, I would imagine they'll only cosmetically be different. So, you know, you might be fighting what looks like two different bosses as Horde and Alliance, but they'll have identical mechanics. However, if the way they try and make those look a bit different cosmetically means that some ground effects are more easily seen with one faction than another, then yes, you can potentially affect, not the world first race, because the world first race is pure Horde. That's all there is to it. But you can still affect everyone else's progress race. Well, not everyone else's. A small number that happen to have an Alliance raid roughly on their level. Alliance raid guild even. What if instead of using a fair amount of resources on pushing out a mediocre game over 2 years, they spend a ton of resources on creating a great game and switch to living world mode, like Guild Wars 2? I think they're stuck on a pattern with World of Warcraft. Because if there was something they were going to change about expansions, for me, the first thing to go would be levels. Get rid of levels. After that, but I think they're stuck in a mode. It's almost like, I think there are certain things that they are going to change. It looks like they're going to try a few things in BFA. And I think there are certain other things that they believe are a core part of the game, and it would be a different game without it, and therefore maybe they're going to try it out for a different game. On Reddit it says there's an option to see the story from the other side of the raid. Other side for the raid. Oh, really? 9 bosses in total. 3 are shared, 3 are faction specific. You clear the other factions when you finish your 6. I still wonder if they really are faction specific though. Because if they have different mechanics, you're inevitably going to create, at some point, it doesn't matter how... Bear in mind, they moved away from the 10 and 25 man raid model specifically because they said it's too difficult to tune what are effects two different bosses, even though they were the same boss, but you know, for 10 and 25 man, and be equal difficulty. So they're only creating another problem here. I cannot believe they would actually be different bosses other than just cosmetically. But even then, as I say, I just worry, you know, that maybe some effects show up more clearly for one faction than another because of those cosmetic differences. Do I think the allied races are weird? The fact that Blood Elves, Draenei Pandas and had new animations and were available at launch, whereas these reskins must be unlocked. No, because the reason they put stuff in for you to unlock is so you stay subscribed. Allied races are 100% a way of keeping people subscribed. If it wasn't about that, because although Ian Hazacosta said in that AMA, he said every decision we made is only based on what we think is fun for the player. Bullshit. I'm not saying that's not the case at all, but it is not the case in every case. If it weren't for the fact that allied races were there to keep you subscribed, they would just have sub-races. Because that's what we thought they were at first, sub-races. Just extra customization options for the races that already exist, because that's what they are. To all intents and purposes, they are sub-races. But by having them as these allied races, they can force us to have to unlock it. And the way they've traditionally done that is by, you know, making sure you've played a good chunk of the game. Because although many of you may well already have the requirements to unlock those races if they were to come out tomorrow, A lot of people wouldn't. A lot of people would still be on it. You've got to remember, like, you think when Pathfinder Part 2 came out in Legion, just before we went to Argus, there were some people still unlocking it when the expansion was done and dusted. There's a lot of people that are even lazier than I am now in the game. They're entirely different from what you understand. Well, I would be surprised. That's the thing. If you've actually got any bosses that only Alliance players are going to get to see, and the same obviously with Horde, I would be amazed at that, because that breaches two of the things they have whinged about in the last few years. One, and this was a very recent thing, the fact that they'd be creating content for not the whole player base. That was what they were whinging about with all the class-specific content in Legion, even though it was their bloody idea. They went, oh, when we do this just for Paladins, it means no bugger else gets to see it, which was a lie, because everyone plays Paladins, obviously. But, you know, that was the idea of it. So to then do this, where you're going to... And then the question will be asked, here's another thing. They're making a rod for their own back if they do this. Imagine this, right? We know that in the raiding community, Horde massively outnumber Alliance. The further up you go, more so, okay? Here's the thing. Let's say that there's an Alliance, a boss that comes out for the Alliance to fight and the Horde doesn't fight it. There's going to be accusations that, especially if people aren't keen on a boss, oh, Blizzard didn't put as much time into designing those bosses because most raiders are Horde. They are opening themselves up for... I don't understand Blizzard. For a company that get really sniffy when the community complain about something, I do not understand why they would put something in the game that is going to invite complaints. Oh, sorry. Okay, minority. So both of them get access to all 9 bosses. Only the order changes per faction. All right, that's fine. That's okay. Oh, actually, is it okay? Because you know what I'm going to say next? Do you know what I'm going to say next? What if there's an easier order? What if there's an easier order to do them in? You're still going to get it. It still doesn't disqualify the concern. It's better, I'll grant you. A faction-specific boss would be a stupid idea. But... Sorry, Elmu, no, if I go on to a little bit of a I don't always read the text quickly. I don't see the comments as quickly as you think I do. But if they do it in a different order and one order is easier, you suspect you can pick your order in Mythic? Well, I hope so. In which case, what's the difference at all? Let's just be clear about this. I'll go. What is the actual difference? If you can pick the order and it's the same bosses, what's the difference? Is it just the story? Is it just the reason why you're in there? I mean, what I would be concerned about is not so much what you're saying there about the Alliance Guild got the easy kill after Horde came in and figured the strategy. It would be more about... So imagine a situation, you're a Progress Mythic Guild. In the first week, let's say 2 guilds that are exactly the same in terms of, you know, the gear, the quality of their raid, all the rest of it. And it opens up, and one's Alliance and one's Horde. Now, let's say the Alliance has the slightly easier first few bosses. So they get to kill 3 bosses on their first week. And the Horde Guild only gets to kill 2. The Alliance Guild now has more gear for the second week. So they re-clear a bit quicker and they're into the 4th boss and it all gets a bit better from there. Because that's where, you know, lots of guilds start to separate out in terms of progress. Just killing 1 extra boss in the first week can give you several pieces of gear, which can really help the second week. And then in the second week, if you get another, you know, and it all just sort of dominoes from there. The more bosses you can kill on any given week, you know, the difference between finishing the week, having just had a 5% wipe, and having killed the boss can be very significant, especially in the early days, because in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the raid, everything is a big upgrade. The upgrades become less important as you go on. If limit beats method, if limit beats method, do you know what? I think people are going to start to question why method streamed their raids, if I'm going to be totally honest. And I wonder what some of the actual raiders, as in the proper raiders in method, think about that. But it would be exciting because here's the thing. The way it seems to me is I find it impossible to criticize Method's decision to stream because on the one hand, it's like, why shouldn't they? And also it's engaging with the community. It's all good stuff. But the problem is, if they don't get world first, people may query, well, maybe you would have got world first if you weren't taking the piss. Because it's a bit like in Rocky 3, isn't it? Where Rocky Balboa is taking the piss with his training and then gets his face smashed in by Mr. T. Or Clubber Lang. That's his character, isn't it? So, yeah, if Method do lose the world first race, people will be going, you didn't take it seriously, did you? Whereas if Method do win the world first race, then it's very much like, okay, they can afford, you know, to effectively show everyone what they're doing and still get world first. At which point, that's very deflating for the people watching. Because it doesn't matter how close in time they were, if Method still wins, having what might be considered give themselves an advantage. A disadvantage, I should say. Would be interested to see a US guild take world first. Yes, it would. You say again, it's a long time since. It's a long time since. If they do lose it, I hope it doesn't put them off doing it again. Oh, what, Limit? No, I don't think it will. I mean, they had a complete nightmare in Legion, didn't they, Limit? So I think they'd be encouraged. I think it must be initially extremely deflating to when you're in a world first race to suddenly hear that someone else has got it. And I can totally understand why they stop raiding at that point and have a break and come back to it the next day. So they might only be a couple of hours away from doing it themselves, but usually it's like some hours later. I can't, you know, on a smaller scale, I'm sure we've all experienced this, but on that level, yeah, I don't think, well, I certainly haven't experienced the massive crushing defeat that would be. But unfortunately, that's the game you play when you're playing at that level. Someone has to finish second who had a real shot at first. I don't even remember the last US World First. It may not have even been Shakespeare. Was it? You say the World First race is irrelevant to like all of the players? I don't think it is, because people watch it. People are interested in it. It's not irrelevant. Just because people aren't participating, you know, the vast majority of people don't participate in the World Cup, but it is still the most popular sporting event on the planet. It is relevant, therefore. Heart of Fear, okay, yeah. No, it wasn't vanilla. But it has been a good long time. Did they announce classes? Well, classes were data mined for Zandalari and Kulturans ages ago. Like, you know, half a year ago or something. So, yes, they haven't been officially announced, though. They were data mined along, because there have been various aspects of them have been in the game files for a long, long time. And Zandalari Paladins are not amongst those race class combinations. However, that's only because the story, I'm convinced that Zandalari Paladins are going to be a thing. Not necessarily when Zandalari Trolls come out. Later. You're countering my point about Method being told they didn't take it serious enough. People are happy that they streamed it, whereas no one cared about World First in the past. No, I'm not criticising, but that's what I mean. I find it, there's just a thing in me that thinks, it's just going to seem a bit off, whatever happens. But I'm not criticising it. I cannot think of a single criticism of it. But I don't agree that people don't care about World First in the past. I think people have always cared about World First. Maybe I don't know about Vanilla. I don't remember. Although even then, it was people noted it. But although it was largely relevant right to begin with, because it wasn't so much Alliance versus Horde. North American players got a full 6 months notice, didn't they? They got it 6 months before, 5 or 6 months before the EU. Lightforged, Forsaken, Paladins went, I don't know. We don't even know that like there's going to be any more allied races at all. There may be, there may not be. All I know is that if there are going to be any more allied races, Vulpera are not one of them because they're not allied races. World First is our curiosity. They are of core importance. I don't think that's true. You've got to put it this way. Method, you look at some of the media they have where they don't have a particularly strong following. They've upped it very recently. But their World First kills would be watched by ridiculous numbers of people. I think it's very relevant. I think a lot of people pay attention to it. Even people that don't raid and don't even intend to raid. Because this was my worry when Ian Hazacosta started talking about, what was he saying now? He was saying, oh, you know how traditionally the main boss has been the last boss in the raid? Well, now it's not going to be. At that point, I thought, oh my God, no. Because what I was thinking is, the raid content is the premier content in World of Warcraft. And therefore, the main enemy has to be the focus of it. If Method disadvantaged tomorrow, it wouldn't dent WoW's player base. No, it wouldn't. But there'd be another World First. The World First race would still be popular. In fact, it would be arguably more popular. Unfortunately for Method, the player base would be more interested in the World First if they disappeared off the planet. Massive amount of interest in the World First race. Just because it's not everyone. You only have to look at how many people are watching their stuff. Because they're not big YouTubers or anything. Most of their stuff when it comes out, like they tried doing some discussion videos at the end of Legion. They didn't get that many views. You know, it was Method, so they got like 10,000 views or something like that. It's not that much. But their raid stuff gets loads. World First. Well, obviously Method put it on a more professional basis. Yeah, absolutely. But, yeah, I mean, that's just it. They're in a bit of a different league in terms of their organisation. Do I think Feral Druid will get a better buff, a better DPS? I haven't even seen the buff they have got. I gather they have been buffed. They were one of the ones who needed it. But usually, things like this is not a simple case of a tuning knob. Blizzard like to try and give the impression it's a case of tuning knobs. But if it was as simple as that, why don't they bloody well use them then? Because it's not. A lot of the time, it's about... You need to have the mechanics of the class such that it can deal reasonable damage in well, at least in most situations, but not be stupidly overpowered in others, which unfortunately does not happen. I have no interest in watching a raid either, Caleb. No interest. I don't understand people who want to watch raids. I think it's the dullest. It's a bit like there's some sports when I was younger that I used to play that I didn't like watching. Like I was mad keen on judo. Didn't enjoy watching other people play judo. Badminton was one of my favourite sports. Do not enjoy watching badminton. Whereas football I like watching, but I never really liked playing football. And I think it's the same with this. I enjoy raiding, but I do not enjoy watching other people doing it. However, there are a lot of people who do. Massive number of people who do. It seems like the Method streams have brought the World First close to people. Yeah, I agree with that as well. That's what I mean. I cannot think of anything to criticise about it. At all. It's just there's part of my brain going, the problem is that there is a reason why the top guilds hide everything they do until they've killed it. That's all. It's as simple as that. But I have no criticism of it at all. Because, yes, it's a good thing for the community. I just wonder what it's like for those... Because you got to... You try and imagine, if you can, the sacrifices that have to be made by those raiders. And the sacrifice is no less for the people who end up with the world second or even third. And imagine what it's like to finish second. That's very, very disheartening. Crushing even, I would say. But then imagine what it's like to finish second and you can put it down to something that you don't think your guild should have done. That would just make it way worse, wouldn't it? Now, I don't know. I mean, for all I know, all the Method Raiders are totally cool with it. But I just wonder. Buffing something by 400% means they haven't bothered tuning anything. Absolutely, this is exactly my point. When there have been certain traits, abilities, things like that, that have been... If you get buffed by like 5% or something, it's like, well, okay, that's a bit of fine-tuning maybe. But if it's buffed by several 100%, that's not fine-tuning. That means you had it nowhere near to start with. They are making so much money from the stream. Of course they are. Method, ultimately, are not a raid guild anymore. They are a corporate entity. You know, brand Method. Because when you're talking about Method, there's two things you can be talking about. There's the corporate Method brand. They're delighted with whoever wins the world first race. Because effectively, they're broadcasters now from that point of view. They'll be happy as Larry with whoever wins it. But then there's the Method Raiding Guild. Obviously, they want to win it. Any hints that we'll get a BFA Generation Epic Battleground in 8.1? Wouldn't an Epic Battleground effectively be a PvP version of a Warfront? Isn't that what it would be? That's what I would have thought it would be. Especially when he started talking about the Darkshore one as having siege engines, ballista, things like that. Wouldn't it be cool if you could have that as a PvP event? But that doesn't seem to be the way they want to do Warfronts. Which I think is a miss. Because I think, I mean, I keep saying it, I think PvP in WoW is shite. Whereas Warfronts would possibly, if it was a PvP piece of content, would possibly give it some chance of being good. You don't get why they put the whole expansion out there like TBC, or why they don't put it all out there and say, here you go, you choose to go through it as your choice. Because they need, although they make a lot of money from the selling the expansion itself, and from some people's point of view, it's enough money, but it's a business at the end of the day. They also want people to subscribe. You don't keep people... I mean, some people would say subscribed anyway. But there's also a significant number that do not. So they have to gate... Well, apart from anything else, they can't actually do an expansion and bring it all out anyway. It's not ready. But that aside, even the bits that are ready, they gate because they need to give you enough for you to feel busy. But... that's it. They need to find the limit and then bring the next lot out the next month. Or a few weeks later, whatever. They need to basically let us feel that if we leave the game for even a few weeks, we'll be missing out on something new coming out. That's their ideal. That's their goal. It's not easy to do. Because, like they've said before, and it's perfectly true, they can't create content at the same rate as we consume it. I mean, Method are going to finish, or Method, Limit and Pieces and all the rest, are going to finish Aldi in a couple of weeks flat. They can't create a raid in 2 weeks. And even the rest of us are going to, like, clear it quicker than they took to make it. Warfronts could have been so much better and so easy to implement and facilitate old world stuff too. Yes, I agree. I do not know. I do not know what their thinking was with Warfronts. I do not understand. Say, 2 throwaway Warfronts, revamped Wintergrasp and Tall Brad. See, I wasn't really there for most of Cataclysm, so I can't really comment on Tolbarad. But Winter Grasp, at first I was excited about it, and then I realised how shit it was. Because it was so small. And when it came down to it, it wasn't really a siege at all. You know, the siege element of it was very poor. When there's one, I don't understand how they get large-scale PvP so wrong. I really don't. If incursions are like mini warfronts, but in the open world it might have potential. I don't know. We'll have to see how it is in practice. You are just keen to see Anduin kick some butts. We will see. Dynamic events from Guild Wars 2 were fun for you. You wish WoW could adopt a similar system. Makes the world more immersive. Well, I mean, this is their problem ultimately. They keep saying they want us out in the world, but the bottom line is that the world is not immersive. It's not. And I don't understand why they don't play games where it is and learn from that. There are so many. I mean, I don't play a lot of games. It's like one of my students today was trying to persuade me to do a Fortnite review. Says, do a Fortnite review, get loads of views. No, not doing it. Don't want to play Fortnite. Just do one. Just do one. No, I don't play lots of games. I don't like playing lots of games. But when is my next Sun Tzu video? Unfortunately, postponed because Blizzard suddenly did a thing at the last minute on Friday, and it's taken up all my time, I'm afraid. So I won't be able to do the Sun Tzu video this week. It would have to be next week now. Apologies for that. They wrecked my weekend. But yeah, so... But I have still played enough games to know how certain things can be done well. And I've seen games where you are encouraged to go out in the world. And I don't understand why they don't look at those games and go, oh, that's how they do that. Can we think of something similar? Instead of basically corralling us there. That's the problem. I feel whenever I need to go out and do something in the world, I feel like I'm being shepherded there. Instead of, you know, just going one day, oh, I want to do this thing. Oh, I'll go over there to do it. I just want to feel that I want to go into the world, not that I'm being, you know, chivied along to go there. Do I think Blizzard will reintroduce a Mage Tower-like system BFA? No. Because they moaned about it. They didn't like it. They didn't like the fact that they were having to do all this content, which was only being experienced by some player. Each piece of content only experienced by some players. How do I feel about the nerf to the best Azeroth traits while leaving the very underperforming ret ones untouched? Well, they haven't finished yet. I mean, I think it was important to smash down. I haven't really looked at them in detail yet either. You've got to bear in mind, I've only just... Tuesday is the day that my boss has deemed that we're going to work late as well. We have like meetings on Tuesday. So I only just get enough time to come home, get some tea, which is what we call dinner up here, evening meal. I don't actually drink tea. Tea is a food where I come from. And watch a little bit of a YouTube video that I then become very annoyed about, and then come onto stream. So I haven't had a chance to go through it all yet. However, if they've smashed the top performing traits, that makes sense, because that's more important than buffing underperforming traits, if you see what I mean. But eventually you will hope they'll try and get around to all of them. However, that being said, I think that it's inherently impossible to properly tune it all, like balance it all. You know, so we'll inevitably at some point get another little comment from him, from Ian Hazacosta, saying, oh, is balance really all that important? Yes, it is. But he may decide otherwise. World quests have no scale. A boss being there to give extra loot is hardly an event. No, it is not. I mean, I could again just list all the things that are done in Elder Scrolls Online. But there's no point. I mean, they don't do any of them. Am I excited for the story to continue along? I'm excited for some of the stories, yeah. I am very interested in Vol'jin's story. Of the ones that were mentioned tonight, I am much more interested in Vol'jin's story. I'm not as interested as some of the others at the moment. That's not to say that I'm not interested. Like, I am interested in Ashara and N'Zoth's story, but that isn't there yet. That's not there. But the Vol'jin story I am definitely interested in. When am I going to switch back to Alliance? I've told you, Alliance doesn't exist. Blizzard removed Alliance. Everyone that thinks they play Alliance right now, you're actually not. What you actually are, you're Horde players hooked into a Matrix-style system to make you think you're playing Alliance. But you're not. You're just figments of someone's imagination. Which is sad. You know, it's sad to say. But unfortunately, Alliance doesn't exist. And I have played a lot of the Alliance stuff on the beta anyway, so at the moment I haven't missed anything out. And at some point, I'm probably going to be... I can probably show that. I don't know why that's been flagged. I can probably say that at some point I'll probably level up my American Paladin, who is Alliance still. At the moment, though, I'm just fine. I just don't have the time to do side stuff. You'd argue that now is not the time to smash overperforming traits in underperforming classes. Well, I would agree that if they've smashed an overperforming trait in an underperforming class, they should have compensated that underperforming class. I agree with that. But that's not an issue with the traits. That's an issue with their overall class balance attitude. Whereas, yeah, so... Can I make a video where I talk about myself for a bit? Didn't I do that? Didn't I do an entire series where I did that recently? It's called Old Man Something. Can't remember, I'm old. I did a series on just that very recently. But it's not in a playlist. You may have to search for Thete Gaming Old Man, and they'll probably come up. I'm the only YouTube content creator that actually played Nax. I'm not sure I am. I know Preach didn't progress it because I remember one of his stories where he talks about his old stuff, and he was talking about Nax being out while he'd just finished Molten Core. But he did do it at some point. Well, it might have been TBC. Or maybe he was boosted through it at the end of thing, I don't know. But I think he's done it. He's got experience of it. I'm pretty sure there are others as well. As long as gnomes are playable, the Alliance exists. No. Even gnomes have been destroyed. You know, it's all in your imagination. You're all just part of this conspiracy now. We're all in the Matrix. You honestly think that at the end of the expansions, players will have a choice to go neutral and play on either side with any race? The problem with that is, I don't see how it's something you easily give a choice to. Because either you can play either faction as any race or you can't. Because if one player has the choice, that means they also have the choice of joining various guilds. What's the purpose of the Alliance? The purpose of the Alliance is to create a series of NPCs to drive the narrative. Because the narrative is Alliance and Horde. So, although they've stopped the Alliance being played by actual players, albeit not all without their knowledge, they still have to exist in the game. Do I think Ian will actually answer any questions this time, or just more misdirection and BMAT? What do you mean this time? He's already done his thing. He didn't answer any questions. What I'm missing stuff here. What am I missing? Wonder if there'll be a Siege of Nomrigon. We did that at level 20 odd. And we won, where the gnomes could not. Explain the Alliance doesn't exist. It's simple, they don't exist. It's just... No, I don't know. Asmogel reacting to my videos is bad. He did that once. And all of his brainless... I'm not saying they're all brainless. I mean, I've watched his stuff. But his more brainless viewers, shall we say, came and fucking moaned at me. They complained at me for being on his channel when I was asleep. He's got even more followers now. Last thing I need is a whole horde of brainless rednecks coming onto my channel putting stupid bloody comments down. I'd have no chance of doing a mailbox. I'll have to. It's always bad enough. Like if I and I never deliberately do a controversial video. Sometimes I sort of know a video might have a little bit of difference of opinion, but I never do an actually deliberately, genuinely, controversial video. But whenever I do, and you end up with 200 or 300 comments all moaning at me, it's like really difficult to do a mailbox because I'm trying to pick through some sensible comments to talk about. When I had the opposite problem the other week where I couldn't find enough comments. But that's because I'd forgotten to do any actual Warcraft videos that week. How about a third faction? I don't like... See, I like the idea of you are a player, okay? And that's it. That's all there is to it. If someone wants to set up their guild as, traditional horde guild, and they won't allow anyone that's a night elf or an orc or a human or anything like that, fine, they can do that. Just like some people have guilds that are only for druids. But you should be able to... Which video did you react to? I don't know. It was a long time ago now. It was a long time ago. But yeah, whatever it was, a significant number of his viewers felt that it ruined the stream. So no, can we not do that? I mean, I have no issue with Asmongold, but just some of his viewers. I mean, like anyone, I suppose, if you've got, what's he got now? Is it about 20,000 subscribers or something? So if you've got that many people watching you, obviously a fair number are going to be. Even though I keep saying I think the average intelligence of someone who plays World of Warcraft is higher than average in society. But that still leaves enough room for some donuts in there. Has there been a general shift in the industry from developers making games they wanted to play to this? I have no idea. I really don't keep much of an eye on the industry as such. I have no limited interest in from a technical side. I just know which games I like to play. Asmongold reacting rips off the original content creator. No, I don't agree. As long as you are reacting, I don't agree with that. As long as there's some commentary. Although I have seen, I have to confess, where you're talking about somebody clips it from Twitch and puts it up as a YouTube video, I do consider that to be effectively stealing views because that person hasn't done anything. That I agree with. Because if you're not using it for commentary, and if you're not using the minimum amount needed for that commentary, then yes, you are basically just stealing. In which case, of course, if someone finds out about it and has an issue, they can put a strike against the channel for basically taking copyrighted material. They could have limited cross-faction gaming. I mean, obviously a lot of people are taking things that they're saying to suggest, and I would as well, to suggest that something with factions is going to change. Because they've said so. Blizzard, it wasn't Ian Hazacostas this time, were interviewed and they talked about changes to factions. Significant changes. So something is certainly going to happen. I just don't know what. How come I decided to quit raiding, by the way? It wasn't really a decision as such. It's just impossible for me to raid. Like, I found out before summer that I was going to have a much tougher time at work this year. There's loads more on my plate. And when I came back after summer, I found out it's going to be even more than I expected. So at the moment, do you know what? I'm not even kidding. At the moment, I'm finding it hectic even being a casual. That's how bad it is. It really is. I am struggling as a casual. I would have zero chance as a Mythic Raider. It's just too much at work. Oh, you're in Australia. Blimey. See you later. You're heading to bed at 5:30 a.m. You a night watchman or something? I don't think Asmongold himself is toxic at all. Obviously, some of his viewers are, but you have that many viewers, obviously some are going to be. You feel that looking for group stuff should be cross-faction. Well, yeah, so do I. I am looking forward to my first battle report. Do you know what? Just as a little aside. Do you know what I've been... These are not what I'm going to end up using, by the way. But when it comes to battle, I've got a number of issues that I need to solve before I can do battle reports on the channel. One of which is getting a bloody army painted. But I'm not far off now. I'm not far off. In fact, just to prove I'm not being lazy. Hold on. Can I add it in? Hold on. Although there'll be no light on it, you won't see much. Oh no, it's not plugged in. Oh, I can't prove it to you, sorry. But I've got over there some nearly painted models as well. But these things, don't they look ridiculous? But what these are camera glasses. Because I've been trying all sorts of ways of thinking about, so how can I actually record the battle? Camera glass is perfect. The problem is that those ones, the batteries don't last very long. The quality's not too bad, but it could be better. So I've seen some other ones. I'm just going to try different ones, basically, without spending stupid amounts, until I get some that are going to be good enough. Anyway, I'm missing actual WoW comments. Sorry. You're waiting for the day he snaps and starts eating brains on stream. Well, he's not feeling well at the moment. I noticed a tweet from him saying he wouldn't be able to stream today. The thing is, what I get about Asmongold is he seems to apologise a bit too much. I know, okay, I get the fact that he has a lot of subscribers and that's generating a lot of revenue for him on top of everything else. I get that. And that he feels he's now got an obligation. And I know that that's the reason why he didn't really want to get subscribers in the first place, because of that obligation. But if you're ill, you're ill. Do you know what? You're ill. Even if you're effectively self-employed, you're allowed to be ill. And quite frankly, although I'm not exactly a picture of health, when you have the lifestyle that he has, you are going to be ill now and then, aren't you? I mean, let's face it. He's breathing in spores from the decaying ruins of his junk food. Of course he's going to get ill. I don't know why he feels the need to apologise all the time or make out that, you know, he's letting people down. You know, as long as he's telling people in advance, which he is, I think he should stop beating himself up over that. And also, the other thing to remember is, although some people do contribute a lot to him, most of those subs are only giving their Twitch Prime thing anyway. It's not costing them anything extra than what they've already got. Oh, will you stop swearing? I don't know why that's... I'll show it because it's not major, but still. YouTube get upset when you post things like that. It's confusing with the Magar. Which colour skin is supposed to represent the clans? You pick the black skin and that's Blackrock. I guess so. That was always a funny thing. I always have to have a little wry smile when we're talking about the Blackrock clan. Because... And this is like... Because now, I mean, I might criticise some of Blizzard's storytelling as not always thinking sufficiently far ahead. But even right at the start of the game, it was the same thing. Because you have the Blackrock Orcs, right? Who, when they came to Azeroth, resided in Blackrock Mountain. But here's the thing. Blackrock Mountain wasn't named Blackrock Mountain after the clan. It was already called Blackrock Mountain. And the Blackrock Orcs weren't called Blackrock Orcs after the mountain either. They were called that back on Draenor. So we're supposed to believe that Blackrock Orcs on Draenor naturally came and naturally settled at Blackrock Mountain, and it's all a total coincidence. $100 he does a reaction video to that. A video to what? You hate the excuse that Blizzard is a small company and that's why we get... Blizzard isn't a small company, really. In terms of what it's... In terms of the games, I don't see how it's small. I mean, I'm not an expert on game studios, but I'm pretty sure most even famous game studios don't employ as many staff as Blizzard. The game does not encourage good behaviour. Well, no, it doesn't. But you could say the same about life. I don't think the games are any different to life. Life doesn't encourage good behaviour. You know, it has to be said. Anyone, I'm sure, will know people that have got on in life, unfortunately, by being incredibly crass and rude. They retrospectively call themselves BlackRock. Yes, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I saw somewhere, well, it might have even been Warcraft Chronicles, that they were the BlackRock Orc clan. Activision owns Blizzard. Well, it's a little bit. Sort of. Not sort of. The small indie company thing is a joke. Yeah, they're not small. It is. It's just a meme. But it is certainly true that there has been a shift. But I don't necessarily know that we can blame ownership. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. It's too easy to say that. But I think there has been a shift in terms of attitudes towards the game and towards the players. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's because of the ownership. Because the people making these decisions are not the same people. It might be that if Blizzard had always remained an independent company, then it could still have had the same attitude now. There are plenty of companies in history that started off being very customer focused because they had to be, they were small, and then they become huge behemoths and all of a sudden weren't. How do I feel the game has changed since they've merged with Blizzard? I don't think, I'm not saying there definitely hasn't been, I don't think there has been anything that I can put down to that merger. You know, I just think it's the sort of thing that could have happened naturally anyway. Because at the end of the day, wherever there is money, wherever a product makes lots of money, then you will get investment bankers involved, you know, who basically don't give a shit about the product other than that it's profitable, so that they can make a lot of money for their clients. And I think the same thing, the same pressures will come to bear on any company that is very successful at what it does. Do I think they have actual autonomy? I think they have a lot of autonomy, but I don't believe that any company where in theory another group has some power over them, I don't believe ever in a situation like that the group that has the power never ever exercises it. I refuse to believe that. But I do think they've got an awful lot of autonomy. I think they've got a damn sight more autonomy than game studios that are bought out by EA. Should we put it that way? Because they get zero autonomy. They just get a noose. That's all they get as part of the deal. Here you go. Hang yourself. No, not all of the orcs took the blood of Manaroth. So a lot of the ones that remained on Draenor didn't do that. So who's going to be the end boss at the end of the expansion? N'Zoth, let's say. Or some form of N'Zoth type encounter. It'll be old gods related. It will not be faction related. I'll be very surprised if it is, put it that way. You can never say never, but I'd be surprised. Shift happened because of digital distribution and easy hotfixing. Don't think it's just management. Well, there's that as well. Yeah, there's an awful lot of aspects to RPG gaming in general. Because that is a good point about the downloads. I think because of digital downloads, people are, and I know I am, much more inclined to pre-order titles as well, including expansions. And the issue is, in the old days, when you didn't make any money on a game until it launched and you could sell your copies, you had to make sure the launch was great. Because what about those people who didn't buy it first day, read a load of reviews about it being crap and then didn't buy it at all? Whereas when you get a lot of pre-orders, you've made your money already. So any extra that you sell afterwards is like, it's almost like a bonus. But you've made enough money. You know you've made your money back and made a profit before a game even launches. And in a situation like that, I mean, that's what Buki always argues, if anyone ever watches him. He always argues you shouldn't pre-order. I don't, because I do pre-order things. I'd be a hypocrite if I did. But that's the argument that runs. If you pre-order things, You're giving them the money before they've had to deliver. And therefore, there isn't as much motivation to deliver a good product. Now, I think it's a little bit different in an MMO because they want you to carry on subscribing. But for games in general, yeah, digital downloads encourage advanced. It's much easier to get the advanced order. I mean, you could advance order physical copies, but I think it's much more common now to advance order because of that. And it means, yeah, if you can make your money back before you've had to deliver, then yeah. You think it's a stretch to suggest though, as somebody, that WoW is being Activisionized? Yeah, I don't see any massive change. Just because I don't think the company that previously owned them, I always forget what that's called now. I don't think they were much better, and they owned them well before World of Warcraft even. In fact, where is it? Hold on, I've got it in here somewhere. I've still got this up here after I did that video. It's got dust all over it now. It's on here somewhere. Vivendi, that's it. I mean, that was another investment company, wasn't it? They had nothing to do with gaming, but they just owned it. So, I mean, you know, they didn't have any care for the product at all as long as it was profitable. In your opinion, TBC and Wrath were great because they built on what was available. Yeah, but I think that was an issue with it. The problem with TBC, and it did build on the stories that people were familiar with from Warcraft 3, but it led to a situation where you felt that World of Warcraft was only finishing off Warcraft 3 stories. And for me, it didn't have an identity of its own. And it almost then did in Mists of Pandaria. It was like, oh, wow, it's actually having its own identity now. And then that became, for some reason, I don't think it was an unpopular expansion. I think there were a lot of great things in it. But story-wise, it was not popular. And then Blizzard moved away from it again. And maybe now in BFA, they're starting to move more towards it. Maybe. Because at the moment, they're not. BFA is very much going way back to before Warcraft 3 even. Hi, Dan. For the content we get now, $15 a month should be enough. Well, that's another thing to bear in mind. To be fair, the price of a subscription has hardly gone up since the game came out over 10 years ago. I mean, I'm going to be perfectly honest here. I think the pricing of the game is something you can't complain about. It's barely gone up. It certainly hasn't gone up with inflation. Whereas Warhammer, which I'm getting back into, when I last played Warhammer Fantasy Battle, you could get a 2,000 point army, which would include predominantly metal models, for about 200 quid. Roughly 200 quid got you a 2,000 point army. Now, when I'm working out my 2,000 point Age of Sigmar armies, and they're plastic models, it's 400 quid. It's literally double the cost. And that's fewer models as well. And they're not metal, but at the same points worth to last the same amount of time. So the cost of playing the game of Warhammer in just over 10 years has doubled. World of Warcraft hasn't. You know, we pay more for the expansions, that's true, but it's not double. And, you know, and the subscription has hardly gone up. Hardly at all. When Team A was pulled, do I play Age of Sigmar? Not yet, but I'm trying to. I'm building up an Age of Sigmar army. I desperately want to. When Team A was pulled at the end of Wrath, hence why we got crap like Nax again. Oh, it was so awful. The second version of Nax. So awful. To work on Project Titan, which was then cancelled. WoW devs teams never really recovered. It is possible you could make that conclusion. It's difficult because over time you might naturally expect people to get burned out and leave anyway. But I think when you pull a lot of good people off a project, the project that is deprived of them is obviously going to suffer. Because it was, yeah, you're quite right. It was more than, it was a few people that were taken off it. And it's like you might be able to replace one good person over time and stuff like that. But if you suddenly take a right load of people, yeah, it is going to suffer. Is the Alliance the side for casual gamers and that's why they don't exist? Yeah, that's right. A WoW sub is one of the best hour to dollar deal in the industry. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Money-wise, if you just have one account, I mean, I have 3 accounts. I am not a good example. But money-wise, if you just have one account, you just play the game, it's a fantastic deal. And it doesn't, you know, whatever hobbies you try and compare it to, it's very, unless your hobby is couch potato, and even then it could be argued if you want lots of channels, you know, a television subscription, if you want a decent number of the good channels, will cost you more than WoW. So actually, it's even cheaper than being a couch potato, and you get to exercise your brain a little bit as well, even if nothing else. So yeah, it's a fantastic deal. I went Horde to go casual. No, I went Horde to raid. I stayed Horde because it wasn't worth it as a casual, spending a load of money. And then whereas I'm going to go as a casual. Whereas I know people in the guild I'm in now who went Horde. So basically the people I knew went Horde. I've still got to pay for the internet. I would pay for the internet either way though. I'm not living without the internet, regardless of whether I played WoW or not. Because not only are there other online games that I play, for which there's no extra internet cost, but I use it for other things as well. Well, this for a start. So, don't know how I can tolerate those hideous male blood elf attack animations. Well, they're not great, but I think they're better than the female. The female have weird elbows. I can't be doing with them. Don't like their elbows. I did do a video on why I went Horde. Well, that's where the series started. At the start of the series... Oh, no. That's what I was thinking about quitting. Yeah, I will have done one why I went Horde. Well, it was not difficult anyway. The bottom line was I wanted a guild. At the time, I thought, because I couldn't do another expansion like Legion. This was before I knew that work was going to get tougher as well. I couldn't be doing with another expansion like Legion, because in Legion, I was just progressing all the time. Like, in previous expansions, I'd done my progress, killed all the stuff, then you start to farm it, get it down to 1 night a week, and chill for a bit while the next expansion comes out. The next tier comes out. And then in that next tier, you can use that chill time to be testing it and looking ahead at it. Whereas when you're only just getting your cutting edge, if you get it at all, it means not only are you doing your full-on progress all the way through, so you're getting burnt out a bit, but also you don't have time to properly look forward to the next one. So when you start the next tier, you're totally unprepared. It just gets worse and worse. So I thought what I need is a guild where I'm going to be back to clearing it in 2 or 3 months, have a couple of months of chill, get myself ready for the next tier, back into the next tier, firing all cylinders, and cycle round like that. Cycle between full-on progress, chill, full-on progress, chill. And then it'll keep you in the game. So that was the plan. And it was just simply that there were no Alliance guilds recruiting for my class at the appropriate level, because I was now restricting myself quite severely in terms of what was acceptable. So it was simple as that. Do I think merging US and EU servers will ever happen? The problem is, it's like playing on the beta and the PTR if you're in the EU. The latency, although, you know, you can still play with it, it's noticeable. So, you know, servers have to be physically located somewhere. I know the NA servers are also shared by poor sods in Australia, and you know, and that's not ideal. And I know that it's also playable with it because I've played the beta and the alpha and stuff like that. But I still don't think it's good. I would much prefer, rather than actually merging the realms, if they at least allowed people to speak on the same bloody forums. I do not understand why they have to have separate NA and EU forums. For the life of me. Do not get it. And I do not believe any technical reason for it. I don't even care if it's true. I refuse to believe it. I don't understand how other games can have separate NA and EU realms, but have the same bloody forum with less resources. Physical items may be more costly to create because they're physical materials. Well, I think the main thing is, because someone pointed this out in relation to something else, there's also the cost of shippage, isn't there? You've got to box it up and physically ship it somewhere. So there's a lot of cost there. Whereas digital downloads, easy. The poor sods in Australia have servers in Australia. Oh, do they? Oh, the ones physically located in Australia, are they? Oh, I didn't actually know that. Well, that's fine then. But it can connect to NA and sharding in groups. Isn't that a bit disconcerting, though? If you suddenly find yourself in a shard and then suddenly your latency goes from 20 ms to 150. Isn't that a bit awkward? I mean, yeah, it's been fairly clear they don't care about the EU forums. I almost thought they were maybe changing their mind because they did actually say, and this, again, to be fair to Josh Allen, even though I criticise him a lot these days, when he first started, I mean, that was one of the things I think he was trying to push for more stuff to be talked about in the EU forums. However, all it ended up being was whenever they posted something on the NA forums, someone would copy and paste it on the EU forums. But there was no actual discussion ever took place there. But then, to be fair, there isn't very much discussion takes place on the NA forums these days either. So you could argue they're actually now being fair between the EU and NA forums because they don't talk to anyone. People don't like to play with the Latin American realms because of that. The OC realms run smoother, I see. You'd love it if your characters weren't bound to a specific server anymore. Well, yeah, indeed. I mean, this is another thing why whenever they say that everything they do is just from a point of view of fun for everyone else, that's also a lie. I mean, they may still do it at some point, but there is no argument to support the idea of realms anymore. Because you should just have EU realm, NA realm, whatever other realm, OCE realm, whatever, Asian realm. The only reason I can imagine there's any hesitancy on changing to that system is because they still get enough money from people doing transfers, which basically costs them nothing. It's all automated. Stop being racist. Any possibility, say, during summer next year when I've got more time, of a weekly, bi-weekly Warhammer stream? Well, here's the thing, of course. It's like anything. In terms of the content I'm now doing, so obviously still predominantly World of Warcraft. I'm still getting into Warhammer. At a certain point, when I fully got into it, then there could well be more videos on Warhammer. I don't see it as being at the cost of WoW stuff at all. But it all depends on how it takes off. The Lord of the Rings stuff is the stuff that is just set as it is. You know, it doesn't... I sometimes wonder if I should have done it in the first place, because I always knew I was never going to do more than I'm doing now, and that it's never going to get lots of views, and is therefore actually potentially harmful to the channel. So sometimes I regret that. But the Warhammer stuff, obviously what I want to get into is to be able to do regular battle reports, but there are several issues. The first of which is a technical issue, which I am at the moment experimenting on, which is recording them of a suitable quality. I already know how I want to do them, because when I look at battle reports, see, there's quite a few channels do battle reports already. The best ones, from a technical point of view, are, as a channel, if I don't know anyone knows, it's called Mini Wargaming. The only problem is that although from a technical point of view, theirs are the better ones, from a content point of view, they can be awful. There was one released today that I thought, oh, I'll watch a bit of that before the stream. And I got into the first turn and I had to stop it because I do not know how they managed to do this, but they got a basic bloody rule wrong. And I mean basic. And I just thought that just ruins it for me. You know, when you say they're awesome, but they keep getting basic rules wrong. And another thing they keep doing, and I don't understand how they keep doing this, where they'll forget to do something right at the start of their first turn. Roster, crib sheet, make a bloody thing where you go, okay, start of my hero phase, I should do these things. Right, my movement phase, these are the things I should bear in mind. Like as a Nighthaunt player, I will bear in mind, if I roll in the charge phase, say, if I roll a 10, I know I get to have a fight straight away. Things like that. Anyway. It's just technically their battle reports are very good. But, you know, so I have my ideas about how they could be done better, but I need not only to solve the technical issues, which are considerable at the moment, I also need to have a steady stream of people willing to do them, and I need to know whether, I mean, I could in theory host some here, but I'd need to get the tables, which I can do, and some scenery, which I gather scenery all has to be painted these days. It doesn't come pre-painted, so that would take me time. And it'll look rubbish anyway. And also a steady stream of people who'd be willing to do it. Or that when I go to the local gaming club, that they're willing for me to record there, as long as obviously another player is, and that there's enough players there that do Age of Sigmar to have a steady stream of it. So there's an awful lot of hurdles to come. Did I have an Amiga back in the day? No. I know someone who did. I had an Atari. I was an Atari ST, so I never had to put up with the Guru meditation number. Amigas were awful. Absolutely dreadful. But they were just marketed better. The ST was superior. But Amigas became more popular. Let's have a look. Yeah. Latency will make a significant difference to raiding. As I say, there are people who can do it. Obviously, there are Americans that raid in EU and vice versa. And they can, at the top, you know, I mean, Slootbag was raiding from America on an EU, wasn't he, in Legion? I don't know whether he still is. Maybe he still is. I don't know. And he was managing it, but it's just not ideal. But it's not impossible. But it's not fun. I didn't enjoy it. And I suppose with some classes it's worse than others as well. Like a Rep Paladin, it could be quite bad because it's so rapid fire. All right, admittedly a little bit less rapid fire now, but it has been. Shade, no, not interested in doing that. Full-on battles is what I'm interested in. Amiga's had the best game music. Well, ironically, they shouldn't have done. I think that's also because, again, their marketing didn't just extend to people who bought them, but to companies as well. I remember several games where there were extra features in the Amiga version compared to the ST version. But ironically, it certainly shouldn't have had better game music because the ST was actually particularly good. In fact, it was used by sound studios as well. It was much better for sound as a machine. Just wasn't necessarily better supported in games. He is Canadian, yes. Do I think Rhett is too slow as in the downtime? Well, I personally am not that bothered about it. But I understand that it can be an appeal of a class that if it's very rapid fire, people are obviously going to be upset when they deliberately remove that aspect of the class. And it's not like it's removed completely. It's still fairly rapid compared to a lot. But it has been tuned down. So I understand people's consternation. But for me personally, I am not that concerned with it. Have I seen the WoW Diary thing with John Stats? No, I don't know who that is or what that is. So I think the answer to that is no. Camelot Unchained. See, I never played Dark Age of Camelot, if that's what it's related to. But I did hear about it because when I played Warhammer Online, which I was a big fan of with the PvP, I thought it was amazing. A lot of the game was not. It was you know, there was a lot of from a technical point of view, bugs and stuff in the game. But the PvP was amazing. And I joined a guild of players who had played Dark Age of Camelot and saying that a lot of the systems were from that because a lot of the people that made Warhammer Online had come from Dark Age of Camelot. Oh, it's not directly related to Dark Age. Okay, in that case, I don't know. You've got a survival and outlaw at 120 on it. You've been busy. They both have some downtime as well. Always find the way energy regenerates frustrating for some reason. I mean, the thing is, though, as Rhett, if you're using abilities like if you used to, as soon as you finish one ability, straight onto the next, then having any sort of latency there. Because the problem is you're not quite sure if it's been fired off or not. So then you don't know whether to keep spamming it or whether it has fired off and you just haven't, it just hasn't triggered yet, or you haven't seen it yet, and you're wasting your time, and you can lose a lot of DPS. Any rapid fire thing, the problem with it is you can lose quite a bit of DPS because you're not quite sure if the ability that you want to get off has got off until it happens, and you don't see it till a little bit later. And it all adds, it doesn't sound like much, 100 milliseconds, but it all adds up over time. Well, specifically, every 10 times it adds up to 1 second. Built half the vanilla dungeons. Well, it depends which half, doesn't it? If he built the half that includes Scholarmance and Strathome, then I would be very pleased with them. And I am disappointed that Scholarmance, which was my favourite dungeon ever, is no longer accessible. I am most displeased with that. Oh, I know what you're talking about. No, it did do Scholarmance, didn't it? Is this the same one that was featured on Wowhead? I think I might, even though I've not heard of the thing, I think I might know what you're talking about. No, I never had a Commodore 64 either. Basically, my computing experience was Spectrum, Acorn Electron, Atari ST, and then PC. Didn't have a Commodore 64. I knew people who did. Didn't have an Atari console, but again, knew people who did. I knew people who had Amigas as well. No, I didn't. I think the Commodore 64 was the one with the tape deck built into it, wasn't it? Which I'm not sure was a great idea. My favourite game on the ST, which was also, and this is what was annoying to me, also on the Amiga, was Dungeon Master, but in particular the sequel, Chaos Strikes Back, which was a very poor sequel because it's so easy. But it had extra features on the Amiga, which was really annoying because it was virtually impossible to do on the ST, not technically, but just in terms of where to go. Whereas the Amiga had basically like a compass thing that showed you. Featured on Wowhead, yeah, I know the one you mean. I haven't actually seen it, but I know the one you mean now because I remember seeing a tweet about it. Mentioned the reason they added talents to the game the way they did was because leveling was otherwise uneventful. Well, obviously, of course, this is the problem, isn't it? You need to get a little reward for getting a level. It's all, I mean, this is role-playing games 101. It's as simple as that. It's when you level up in a role-playing game. In fact, traditionally, when you level up in a role-playing game, you get a significant increase in the power of your character. So to go from that to nothing at all is poor. And I know Blizzard will say, well, we've got too many levels. We can't give you... Well, okay, well, you shouldn't have too many bloody levels then. Do I think Gahoon will be down within the first reset? It's already the second reset. So unless Method kill it today, no. I actually don't. I mean, you can't. I don't know because I haven't watched them. But I'd be surprised. I think it would be disappointing if Gahoon were killed in the first day. That being said, I think someone told me that Limit had started, they'd extended for theirs. So they obviously feel the breath of Method down their necks. Because if they've chosen not to re-clear to get extra gear, then one, that means they believe they can kill it without that extra gear, and two, they think that Method are close. But I don't know because I haven't watched them. But I mean, there's only a few more hours to go before the EU will shut down for maintenance. Quests were meant to direct players to another zone. No more, no less. It turned out to be one of the major successes of the game. What was this? Hold on. Method of getting close, 4.8%. Well, yeah. Well, I imagine they must be. Otherwise, Blizz at Limit, I'm sure, would have re-cleared. So the fact that they haven't must mean that, you know... I mean, someone was saying, actually, on the Paladin Discord, it's a tough decision to make. Do you re-clear, which means you get more gear and therefore make Gahoon easier, but risk being beaten to the world first race because you've spent the time re-clearing? Because there's nothing to say they're going to kill it first time every time with every boss. There's still some wipes in on the other bosses. Or do you just extend, which is what they've done, in order to try and get that? But the problem is, let's say you don't get it for the next day, then you've potentially made a poor decision. But it's an impossible decision to make because you really don't know which is the right one. They should really add in a new talent point system. Well, I've thought of all sorts of things they could do to improve it. But they're not... I don't know. I mean, they keep saying that, oh, yeah, there's... you know, they always have discussions like this and things like that. I'd be really interested in seeing how those discussions go and what it is actually sways opinion. Because I can absolutely believe that there must be discussions that take place on this, because I refuse to believe that all the, or even a significant proportion of the developers think it's a good idea to have the situation as we have now. So I'd be really interested to see how those discussions go, which we never will. And what it is that eventually gets the people that suggest we should have something to back down. Oops. But, I mean, we'll know either way next week. Well, we'll know this week at some point, won't we? In fact, we can talk. Well, we'll be able to talk about the world first race next week, because by then, not only will it have happened, but I'm quite sure Bay will have grabbed him on for an interview at the weekend. Because, like I say, if nothing else, the fact that Method are that close to it and the fact that Limit elected not to re-clear suggests to me that Gahoon is certainly not mathematically impossible. How do I feel about the difficulty tuning of normal and heroic? I can't really comment directly because I haven't really done them. I've scrubbed now, casual. Normal, I always have a problem with normal because I think it's too easy for what is essentially an organised raid difficulty. But I have to say, I was taken aback how easy Uldir was, at least the first few bosses, because the only Uldir I have done, since it's gone live, I did beta test it, but since it's gone live, the only Uldir I've done was basically another social in my guild doing a pug. He knew nothing about the bosses. It was quite clear that most of the raid knew nothing about the bosses. I think I was the only one there who knew anything about them. The first boss we easily beat with people playing like complete baboons. The second boss we wiped once and then we killed it. The third boss, which one did we do first? I think Thete Devourer we did third. That was, I couldn't believe how easy that was. That was a one shot, and I couldn't believe it because people were making a right arse of it. But it was. And then we did Vectus and Zekvos as well. Vectus was a one-shot. Couldn't believe that. Zekvos was a two-shot. So, and there's no way, because we were totally uncoordinated, people really didn't know what they were doing, and that the bosses were still dying. It was only Zul that wasn't going to happen. Because, like, we didn't, you know. And even that one, to be fair, even I couldn't offer any real advice because I'd forgotten myself a lot of it. Because I didn't really have important jobs to do as a Ret Paladin other than hit the right mob. So we didn't kill that. So we called it there. But, you know, the fact that we got as far as we did just means... I just think normal is a pointless raid difficulty. People keep talking about getting rid of LFR, and I think no, because that actually serves a group of people. I don't think normal does. I don't think normal does service to anyone. And I think they should get rid of that. So the question is, with normal being puggable, should LFR just drop 340 loot for the rest of the expansion? No, it should be the other way around. They should just drop normal. Heroic is puggable. The thing is, I don't like the concept of pugging raids. I think raids, being the premier content, should be the sort of thing you do in a guild. I think that's what guilds are for doing content that you want to do, like in common with other people. I don't like the idea of raid content that is specific, because that's all it seems to exist for. Something that's sufficiently easy to do in a pug. I don't like that. So I think normal should go. And if people want to pug heroic, that's fine. They can. Obviously, if you've got, alt raids for raiding guilds and they pug a few people, that sort of thing is totally, absolutely fine. But no, I agree. You don't always have the choice to raid with a guild. I get that, but I'm not sure. But again, that's what LFR exists for as well. I just think it would be better, because normal, as far as I can tell, is not really that much different to LFR. In terms of the level of communication that goes on, I see no difference at all between normal and LFR. Normal is, yes, more difficult than LFR, but the level of communication is the same. So with normal, all that happens is people either know what to do, or you just don't kill the bosses at a certain point after a certain point, which is what happened. So what's the point in it? Mother is a pug destroyer. Yeah, not on normal though, it's not. I mean, so no. For me, the one, if they were going to get rid of any mode, for me it'd be normal, get rid of. I've hardly been in any normals. Are you talking to someone else? Well, by the time you get to Zul, then some tactics are required. You don't actually need tactics on any of the other bosses, truth be told. I'm not saying they're unwipeable, because we wiped a couple of times, but it's very difficult to wipe if you're actually trying to kill the boss. But you don't actually have to pay attention to anything. Whereas I think Zul, you actually do need some strategy. There's always guilds though, and this is where it would help if there weren't. Okay, for normal heroic, it doesn't really matter about the realm stuff, I suppose, anyway. But it would certainly help if there was no faction divide. There are guilds that raid unsociable hours, even early hours of the morning. There are guilds that do that. And if the game was set up, because obviously with communities now, you don't necessarily have to be in that guild. You could join a community that raids early hours of the morning. And if the game was set up so that you could definitely join them, and it wasn't the case of, oh yeah, you're a guild that raids at the right time for me, brilliant. Oh no, I'm Alliance and you're Horde. If that could be abolished, then I still don't see that there would be a real problem. Because you don't need, for normal and heroic, You don't have to be that choosy with the guilds as such. After running Warfronts and World Bosses, you feel no need to run dungeons or raids. Even LFR is pointless. Well, LFR is certainly pointless as a gear, source of gear, because I'm a casual now. I have no need of the gear in LFR unless it Titan Forges. I did it anyway, though. It would help a lot if there was an NA and EU-wide database with all the guilds they read. Well, that's another thing. Yeah, I mean, WoW Progress is the best we have. But what would be better is if Blizzard did something like that to really... I don't understand why Blizzard don't do more to encourage the social aspects of the game. I really don't get it. You know, it's like they started off, you know, allowing the community to do add-ons and stuff like that and put stuff in the game, which was really good, really positive. But it's like now... Well, it's not even like they do. Blizzard basically leave everything to the community now. And they shouldn't. That where there's a need for something to be done well, they should do it. You know, I agree. I mean, like certain add-ons, I think they should. Not damage meters. I know they're popular, but I agree that they shouldn't be an official part of the game because people use them incorrectly. But there are certain add-ons that have functions, like auction add-ons and stuff like that, that I think should be incorporated in the game. And as I say, yes, I think on the forums, there should be databases of guilds and in-game as well. Proper guilds. I mean, I know there's a guild search tool, but shit. But there should be proper ones. Trying to find a guild for an odd raiding time is way harder than it should be. It is indeed. But they are there. Sometimes the best way to do it is just to post your requirements on the official forums. Because you'll also find that the raid leaders and guild masters of such guilds also find it difficult to get personnel. So they will tend to look at those forums. But the fact that you might be the wrong faction for it when you do find one is more than a little annoying. No, the community isn't very active at the moment. I've noticed that. But I think that's largely because it's new. I think as people start to see the potential in it, it will get better. Guilds were amazing back in Karazhan days. Have destroyed any guild cohesion outside of high-end ranked guilds. Possibly part of that was actually the moving realms, maybe. Because in vanilla, you couldn't really... At the end of vanilla, they started to allow it. But you were stuck for 3 months. So if you transferred to a realm, you couldn't move off it for 3 months. So people did tend to stay largely on those realms. Whereas now, you move as and when. As long as you got the money for it. In fact, the last few realms I've moved to, I couldn't even tell you the names of guilds on it. I mean, I'm on Taran Mill now. That's a large EU Horde realm. I am certain that there are some famous guilds on this realm. But I couldn't tell you who they are. Don't know any guilds on this realm, apart from the one I'm in. And this is the same thing that's happened the past few years when I've moved to a server. I don't really know who else is on it. I have no, you know, whereas I did in the first few years of the game, you got to know not only guilds but people and stuff like that. Yeah, there was more of a community. But that's not necessarily just because of changes in the game. I think that's part of it. I think it's just the way gamers are now as well. I think they're less gregarious, really, when it comes to factions. Method, are they? I have no idea. No, don't care. Don't really have no idea. I'd be certain that there were some famous guilds on Taran Mill. Method's fairly famous, I suppose. I'm quite sure there's more than just them as well. But my point is that I have no idea. There is no benefit in me finding out what realm I'm on, other than remembering the name of it, so that I can find my characters when I log in. But anyway, we've overrun a bit there. I'm going to have a right mess tonight trying to edit something out of this video so that I can put it on for everyone else. So that's going to be delayed. And I'm going to have to start now, really, because it means I'm going to have to render it. So I'm afraid that I'm going to have to call it here. Because it's already going to take me all night to sort this out. But thank you very much for coming on and bearing with me at the start when it all went a bit wobbly. So have a good night, everyone, and I'll be streaming tomorrow on Twitch for a little bit anyway. So I will see you later, and thanks for watching.